Sydney are undefeated after 4 rounds.
West Coast suddenly resembles something in Daniel Bush's rectum.
And the flag is back on for the Dockers. This is the DrewFooty Show.
Long roads could tumble down this black hole. Stuck in Sunday League, but I'm on levels with Ronaldo.
Welcome back to this episode of the DrewFooty Show. But before we get into the round, I've got a pickle to twickle, right? I've been checking my analytics. 60% of people that watch aren't subscribed.
Filthy pigs.
That is filthy pigs. But no, if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing because it helps us out a lot. And we put a lot of effort into this. So if you could subscribe, it would help lots. And I'll probably be able to talk better in the future.
The thing you need to understand is that high sub counts inflate our ego and drive our confidence, which motivates us to do this show. So thank you very much.
So last week we had 45 comments, Jesse, before the round happened. Now, as much as I appreciate these comments, the comments need to fuel the show for the next week and they need to be based on that round. As lovely as those comments are, not many of them got in because they weren't relevant to the round.
That doesn't mean you can't comment before, but obviously if your comment gets rendered sort of irrelevant by the round, that's the danger and it won't make the show. But if it is still relevant, then we'll probably answer it.
Yes, exactly right. All right, now starting with the show, a segment that we brought up a couple weeks back that sort of died in the arse was Bloke of the Week. Now, Jesse, you have a nomination this week for Bloke of the Week. Who have we got?
I think there's a clear nomination this week, Drewzy. This bloke's been doing the rounds as a Mr. Steal Your Girl, and that's Port Adelaide's Lockie Jones. And it's hard to believe this kid is just 19 years old. He stands at 186 centimetres, which for context is significantly shorter than me, but he's 10 kilos heavier than me. He's a real thick boy with,
a thickie.
I'm thinking 3 to 4 C's, maybe even a Q in there.
He looks like he's like 35 going with a mortgage and 3 kids and, you know, he's laying bricks every day, hating his life, but he's 19, winning games for Port Adelaide. Yeah, and he had a great game as well.
He did, played very, very well, and those luscious locks make him stand out. So maybe a couple of Brownlow votes in the future.
Lockie Jones, you are the Bloke of the Week. If anyone has any nominations, comment down below. On with the games, Jesse. Let's progress. Sydney versus the Bombers, Thursday night footy. Finally looking like Essendon are finding their footing. You know, Sydney have been the best form side in the comp, so to only lose by a couple, was it one kick?
3 points.
3 points. Decent signs from Essendon after a big performance against St Kilda, and that's a performance that Essendon will take confidence in.
Obviously, they had the high of smashing St Kilda, who were definitely off their game. I think to back it up with, I reckon Sydney at the SCG on current form is one of the hardest away trips right now.
Yeah.
Just because of, you know, I think Sydney are almost the form team of the comp in terms of, you know, the teams that they've knocked off, in particular Richmond. So, I think Essendon can take a lot from that loss. To go 3 points down against Sydney, I think that's a bit of a tick, to be honest, even though they're probably, 1 and 3 now.
Yeah. And Buddy was back. It's looking like he's only going to play every couple of weeks, but for 3 goals, not a bad return on his return. Yes. Not a bad return on his return.
Nice. And now for our first comment of the week. Thank you again for the submission this week. Shout out to Fitz, whose surname is Manutsin. Are the Swans a genuine premiership contender, or is it still too early to say?
Too early to say, obviously. We're 4 weeks in. Let's keep our heads screwed on here. But they're going to be...
That's the lid being on.
Okay, yeah, you got to keep the lid on and like keep it fresh and that. You don't want to get rotten. They're going to be thereabouts come September. They're going to be top 8. They're going to be playing finals. I don't think there's a question against that. So premiership contenders, probably not. But they're probably going to play a couple finals at least. It's
a long, tough season, but in terms of current form, they're just about as good as anyone. I don't think there's a clear team that's been better than Sydney. And they've got GWS this week, potentially go 5-0. It's hard to imagine too many teams going 5-0 and missing finals.
Friday night was probably one of the best games I can remember seeing. And there's been lots this season. But Port Adelaide versus Richmond in Adelaide, it was a war. It was a brutal battle, and there was a couple casualties. Butters and Dersma going down. Huge moments in this game from Hamish Hartlett. That set shot was unreal. He kicked that ball 65 metres at least, and then I thought Robbie Gray's mark at the end of the game there just ripped that mark down. Such a tough contest to win a mark in. Rips down the mark, goes back and kicks it as straight as bloody, I don't know, something that shaped like an arrow or something.
Lamppost.
Wait, they're a bit curved at the top.
Rats.
Every time these teams play, it's a great game. What did you make of this game?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Robbie Gray is one of the better clutch players, as we saw last year when he broke Carlton hearts after the siren.
Yeah.
Even though he was a bit average in front of goal, I think it was his only goal for the night. It just with the game on the line, Robbie Gray from a tight angle was always going to put that through. And Zach Butters, my favourite Port Adelaide player, absolutely ripper kid. And unfortunately, those injuries are going to be fairly long-term, but it's always nice to see the team that has the injury still wins, because you don't want to think, oh, okay, they lost because they had 2 men down.
Exactly. Our homie Aaron Costanz, who's made my job very easy this week, lots of comments, so shout out to Aaron. Does this Tigers loss now put pressure on them to up their game, or are they still allowed to be in cruise control? So they've lost 2 in a row, which is quite weird for the Tigers. Probably a predicament they haven't found themselves in for a while. But everyone knows the Tigers just time their run at the end of the season.
I agree. Richmond, with their strength and conditioning program, I know that they time their fitness well for the end of the season. And for them, I wouldn't be alarmed at all. With that being said, when on the Amazon Prime doco, Richmond started the year fairly averagely in the COVID year as well. And you actually get that insight. They were taking that very seriously. Yeah. It wasn't a case of, oh, it's all right, boys, we'll time this. Hardwick was like, we need to get our shit together. So I think for as long as they've got the mindset of we need to get back to our best, they'll come good. But I think Richmond's proven over a number of years now that they probably will get back to that form. So not a big loss by any means.
If you are going to lose games as well, to lose to Sydney at home, in hindsight, is not a bad result, really. They're the most informed team in the comp, as we've said. And Port Adelaide away, that's as hard as it gets.
Exactly.
So those are losses you can afford, really. Heading over to Ballarat. Ballarats! Western Bulldogs versus Brisbane Lions. Brisbane's still stuck in Victoria, and they've had a loss. They've copped an L. A very rough game in terms of the conditions. It was wet and windy.
It was a really tough game. I think the Bulldogs supposedly had only tackled 99 times in the first 3 rounds and then tackled 81 times against Brisbane. So it shows that they've sort of got that harder edge to their midfield as well, which is not something they really lacked. But they were up for a fight. And Brisbane's, kind of fighting for their season a little bit. I don't think it's danger signs just yet, but plenty to play for in that game. So nonetheless, a pleasing result for the Dogs.
All of Brisbane's results, other than that Sydney game, have been so tight. Like they've had to fight to the end for every game.
They've had adversity. They're tough opponents and only played 1 game in Queensland as well. And they were shocked by Sydney, who they probably didn't expect to be as good as they are.
Saturday lunch kickoff, Jesse. It was your West Coast Eagles against the Saints.
We didn't just cop an L. We copped a big fat D.
What does D stand for?
Depression.
Demoralization. How was this loss for you?
Oh, it was fucking sick, bro. It was sick.
I like it.
Just to do a self-plug, that's what she said. I do a vlog literally outlining my reaction to the game, but I've calmed down a lot now.
Yeah.
But it was a really frustrating game to watch, and I think even just like looking online across the board of Eagles fans, I don't recall a game where everyone's been so filthy at the way it's gone down for probably since 2017. St Kilda brought a pretty good intensity throughout the whole game, and we held them off with a really strong forward line, and we were taking the most of our opportunities, but statistically we weren't really beating them, and I didn't feel that comfortable. And then in the second half, the Eagles just stopped, and every contest we were outnumbered, and you could just tell the energy levels weren't there, and St Kilda thoroughly deserved to win. They played a pretty good game of footy.
Positive signs, right? Jack Petricelli back in the side. How many goals did he kick? 4 or 5?
4.
Yep, so he was exciting. And I worked at Peel last year, and Izzy Winder got drafted from Peel, made his debut and kicked a goal, so I was happy to see that. Max King kicked 5.
Thanks for rubbing it in. He was fantastic. As I said on the stream, the Eagles have the defence capable of shutting him down, but you can see how talented he is. He was... arguably the difference, but they won by 20 points and he kicked 5 goals himself. So anytime that happens, he had a big... him and Jack Steele were the best 2 on the ground.
Gold Coast Carlton.
Showcase, baby.
No comments on this game, so we don't have to talk about it in too much depth, but Gold Coast aren't winning games.
They blew a golden opportunity to bank 4 points when they're playing reasonable footy. I'd hate to see another season get away from the Suns.
It's looking like that's going to happen again, though.
Yeah, a little bit. I think they are improved, though.
Yeah.
At the moment. For them, it'll just be about sustaining it for longer than they have in previous years, and that's all they can do, really.
Yeah, and Carlton, important result. The Blues will be happy with
Plenty
that.
to play for. Carlton probably have more pressure on them this year.
Yeah, for sure. Now, a big talking point I thought from this round was Collingwood versus GWS at the G. GWS, who haven't showed up this season, go to the G, playing with no pressure, really. Well, lots of pressure, but nothing to lose. That's what I meant. Leon Cameron's job really in the news all week. And Collingwood just pretty much got played off the park by GWS. Toby Green kicked 5. And Collingwood, what is going on there?
Great question. I wish I had the answer for you, because I have been saying since the end of last year, Collingwood have the cattle. They're good enough. Take out Treloar and Stevenson. Nice. Cattle's moo.
What?
Cattle.
What's
that's
sheep?
Cows.
What's sheep then?
Cattle. Yeah, no, it's cows.
Is cattle not sheep as well? Comment below. What is a collection of sheep called? I thought it was cattle. So what's happening with Collingwood?
Where the fuck were we? I think the team's good enough, so then you have to start looking at what it is that there is causing them to be so shit. Is it structural? Is it mental? Is it the coach? Not too sure. Buckley's had a long career at Collingwood now, and again, I argued for him to be sacked right before they made the 2018 grand final, so I'm reluctant to do that now, but when the team looks and appears good enough, it's a bit of a worry when you're turning out performances like that.
Their injury list has been fine as well. Until, Taylor Adams getting injured this weekend. I think the only starting 22 player, or best 22 player that was out was Jamie Elliott. They've got some of the best players in the league, like genuine top 10 players in the league. Brody Grundy, one of the best players in the league. Darcy Moore is talked about as one of the best defenders in the league. Jordan De Goey, best small forward in the league that can play in the middle. Scott Pendlebury, a once-in-a-generation player. These players are all fit, and they just can't make it work.
It's also worth noting that in 18, and if I'm not mistaken, 19 as well, they were butchered by injuries, and they still managed to have really competitive seasons. So, there's no real excuse for it.
Aaron Costanz has asked, has this loss for Collingwood written them off, or were they just beaten by a Giant side with nothing to lose? I don't think they make the 8. I do not think Collingwood make the 8.
Yeah.
I predicted this in the pre-season, got hated for it, which, fair criticism. Collingwood are meant to be a good side. But they haven't shown up. They have not shown up. The only game they've won is against Carlton, which they should be winning if they're a top 8 side.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can write a team off this early in the season, but it's hard to make a case for them being in the 8 best teams. I think there's probably about 10 or 11 teams you could squeeze in front of Collingwood, especially on form right now. So, it's not looking great.
North Melbourne versus Adelaide.
Plenty of talking points.
The only thing I really wanted to talk about is Tex is at 20 goals, and mathematically, he is on for 100 goals. This is a possibility of happening.
I think with the way the game's played, the Coleman medalist is probably going to have 80 to 90 goals this year. I think 100 is still going to be a bit extreme. You're asking him to maintain a ridiculous form line, but I think he could get like 88 goals, which is still incredible.
Yeah, I like the Texan. I'm happy to see him back. And Adelaide play Freo next week. I don't know if we win that. The intensity that Adelaide play with has been shown all this season. What are they, 3-1?
3-1, yeah.
So, they're
potentially
playing
4-1.
Yeah.
Tex Walker could be leading the Brownlow almost at this point, as well as the Coleman. So
playing against a depleted Dockers backline, he'll probably have 8 goals. But, big game next week for Adelaide. Big game next week for the Dockers. And North Melbourne play Geelong next week. So, smelly times for North Melbourne.
Adelaide are one of those teams you could lump into looking finals quality at the moment. They're ahead of West Coast on the ladder now. They're 5th and looking very, very good. So, we'll see how this train continues.
Who would have thought?
Chill.
So Melbourne played Geelong at the G, home game for the Melbourne Demons, and they didn't make a mistake. They dominated for 4 quarters just about and beat the Cats, their long-time rival who have dicked them about for all these years. It was nice for the Ds to get one back over the Cats.
I think Melbourne have started to show some stability. I think we've made this point in previous weeks, but it's good to see them not bottle it against the team they would normally bottle it against.
Yeah.
Think back to 2018 where over the stretch they were clearly better than Geelong, but lost both times in the dying minute. So this is a real step up. I know Geelong's not playing real hot footy at the moment, but there's plenty to like about Melbourne, who don't have a forward line at the moment. The 2 talls are out, so plenty of upside too.
They're one of the best defensive teams in the league, even though Stephen May got his orbital bone fractured or something like that. That was grim.
Yeah, out for a month.
The way they set up, once the ball gets to the wing, when you're playing against Melbourne, there's really nowhere to go except long down the line. They're setting up really well. Players that are impressing, there's the constants. Petrarca had 36 touches or 35 and 2 goals. Clayton Oliver had 30 plus. But some unsung heroes. Ed Langdon, he played for Freo, and I could see his quality, but he obviously wasn't being talked about. He had like 900 metres gained last week, I think.
Yeah.
He's always back in defence, and he's always in the 50 to try score goals as well. He doesn't stop running all day long. And Bailey Fritsch, he doesn't get much of the ball, but when he does, he is deadly. He is so efficient. He's kicked 10 goals in 4 games this season. With Wiedemann and Ben Brown out, he's really stepped up, and once they come back, he'll be deadly again.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Bailey Fritsch. I think he's one of the more underrated players at the moment. I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were going through Melbourne's top goal kickers, and one was Petrarca, one was Fritsch and Pickett and stuff like that as well. So they're getting goals through avenues other than big key forwards. And so when they get these guys back, they're going to have multiple attacking options, which is, really dangerous. Shout out to Aussie Lockie with this week's question for Geelong, and he says, is it possible that the Cats won't make the 8 this year?
I see them sneaking in. Class is permanent. Geelong always just find a way, don't they?
I agree.
I don't think they'll make the top 4. They've got Jeremy Cameron and Dangerfield coming back into the side this week, and they're going to play North Melbourne. You'd think they'll just demolish North Melbourne this week, and that will just get them in the form that they need to be to go on with the rest of their season. That's how it makes sense in my head. What do you reckon?
I agree. I think it is worth noting they're playing very poorly at the moment.
Yeah,
they're lucky to have the wins they are. Like against Brisbane, they snuck through.
Yeah.
Obviously lost to Adelaide, and then against Hawthorn as well. They
looked average.
They stopped. Like Hawthorn, it was just a case of Hawthorn not being able to score, but they were completely dominating the game.
Yeah.
And then this Melbourne game for me was absolutely no surprise. Melbourne far too good. So yeah, like you say, I think the team's too good not to come back, and I think with the GMHBA sort of factor, they're going to smash North. Then they play the Eagles, who have won once there in 20 years. There's absolutely no chance we win that. So they can sort of play this season back into form. And they've also had a few outs as well, which doesn't help.
Last game of the round. Dockers always play the last game of the round because everyone's sick of football.
Because it's the best.
Yeah, best till last. Dockers versus Hawks at Optus Stadium. The best quarter we played all season was the first quarter. And then we just stunk it up for the next two. Classic Freo, can't play four quarters. But I think the turning point in the middle of the game there, Hawthorn are a very dirty side when they want to be. They really went after Andrew Brayshaw and Chera. Like, every time they were going back to the centre after a goal, they were just pushing them, not letting them get back. They were punching them off the ball. Walters was punched off not punched, but hip and shoulders off the ball twice. Fife was pushed off the ball when he was just going for a lead, just pushed over. We got a 50 from it. Hawthorn are a dirty shit side. Yeah. I don't like them. And they wear brown. So
yeah.
That's the colour of poo if you're healthy.
And wheeze.
Poos and wheeze. Hawthorn are poos and wheeze. Think about it.
Yeah, you're right. I think Hawthorn under Clarkson in particular have that little hard edge to them, so they're going to always play a little bit dirty. Sam Mitchell was a little bit like that as well as a player, but I think
as a family man.
I think it's also a bit of a mark of respect to the way Brayshaw and Chera have come on. The fact that Hawthorn have gone out and targeted them is probably... Brayshaw's probably the most dangerous mid at the moment. 100%. With Fife playing forward, he's the man to stop, to be honest. And, it kind of worked a treat, I think, didn't it? While you say that Fremantle stunk it up against Hawthorn, I do think it's also worth noting they're not playing horrible footy. Like
Freo?
No, Hawthorn.
Oh, okay.
So the fact that you won by 4 goals is still promising. Do you know what I mean? I know when it's contextual because Hawthorn could still finish bottom 4, but they're not playing like a bottom 4 side. They took it up to the Cats and, like I said, arguably should have won the game with the opportunities they had. And I think the brand they're playing at the moment is solid. They're not easy beats.
We should be beating Hawthorn though. Like, where our development was at last year, it looked like we were going to take that next step. And if anything this season, we've stayed stagnant or if anything, taken a back step. So beating Hawthorn really doesn't mean much to me at all. We go to Adelaide next week and they play with a real high intensity, which we usually crumble under. I'll be very surprised if we win away to Adelaide with the form they're in. I will be streaming that on the channel next Sunday.
Shout out to UCAT, who has the final question of this week's episode. Do Freo keep Sean Darcy down forward permanently and get him to take an extra focus on his goal kicking? Or do you keep Amik or Tracy down forward who can probably move around more agilely than the fridge?
These players we're talking about are actually stinkers. I'm sorry. Lloyd Meek has played 2 or 3 games, still developing. Sean Darcy, just a big lump of meat down there. He played really well yesterday.
Oh, you've seen it?
Apparently requested a trade back to Victoria midweek last week. So when that comes in the news, it's usually true.
Who does it in round 4?
Yeah, I don't know. He didn't request it, but I think he's expressed interest to return back to Victoria. Same as Darcy Tucker. So persevering with Sean Darcy down forward doesn't really make sense to me. But Josh Tracy, he has a big, good pair of hands. And I thought he was alright yesterday for his first game, even though he didn't kick a goal. I like Lloyd Meek better than Darcy in the ruck. I think he provides a better option in the middle. And we don't need to talk about Sean Darcy as a long-term forward, let's be honest.
I agree.
That's going to wrap up this episode of the DrewFooty Show. We've been loving it, Jesse.
It's been nice, buddy.
The support's been outstanding as well. So give it up for yourselves.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Go follow my Instagram @_Drewzy. And go check out my TikTok as well, @_Drewzy. I post clips from my videos as well. So if you want to check that out, go give that a follow. Just the tips. We're about to go film that right now.
Yeah, we are. We got a fair bit of content. Bring back Matchday vlogs coming out as well. So stay tuned to DrewFooty.
And the video coming out with Jamal Dillon on Thursday as well. So keep your eyes out for that. But that's going to wrap up the video. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week.
See you later.